Welcome once again after such a long time, Caroline. Well, what have you been doing for these years?
Well, I've I've still been working at my role at Citizen Go. So now I manage all the English speaking countries. So I help run campaigns in the UK, the Republic of Ireland, the US, Canada, Australia, where Citizen Go have a particularly strong presence, and in Africa. So yeah, we've still been fighting for faith, family, and freedom. And on a personal note, Rodney, I don't know, had I been arrested the last time we spoke?
No, that was afterwards.
Oh,
Yeah.
so yes, I had the misfortune of being arrested because I'd used the wrong pronouns. Literally, I made headlines across the world because one night I was cooking the family dinner, literally cooking roast chicken for my children. And there was a knock at the door, and it was the policeman. And my husband said, "Caroline, it's the police. They're here for you." And they came to arrest me because, and they literally, when we obviously later on we sued them and we won, they had literally written misgendering as a reason to arrest me, and because somebody had posted an offensive meme on the internet, and this transgender interlocutor, who a particular activist who's been on my case for many years, had said, "Oh, it's Caroline Farrow that's posted this." So they came and arrested me for misgendering and for posting a meme, which actually wasn't a meme that I'd posted anyway. But even if I had, it shouldn't be illegal. Um, and they put me in custody for 8 hours. And then they arrested me a second time a few months later because there had been such a press outrage that, Catholic mother of five arrested while cooking the dinner. And in fact, I mean, Rodney, we could have a whole show about this. It was very amusing. I can laugh now. It wasn't quite so funny at the
No.
time. Um,
Which
but
police force are we talking about?
sorry, please, sorry,
Yeah,
please.
some of them are noted. You've come
Yes, I
to that
mean,
conclusion, I think.
there's been a lot of controversy around Surrey Police because um, there was Surrey Pride celebrations. So the Surrey Pride group was run by a man called Stephen Ireland, and Surrey Police promoted Stephen Ireland, and they would drive him round in their Panda car and take him to schools where he could give presentations about the importance of LGBT ideology, and calling a man a woman, and just that whole, the whole LGBT ideology. So he would go around schools and he would be supported by Surrey Police, who would help him give his presentations and say, "Well, come on, kids, using the wrong pronouns is a pride, it is a crime, sorry, or a hate crime." And what your listeners won't know is that Stephen Ireland was put in prison for 30 years. He was convicted of child sexual offences of the worst possible, of the utmost depravity. And literally 2 days before he was arrested, Surrey Police were driving him around in their police car. This is all demonstrable fact. A lot of the feminists got onto this. A lot of the UK feminists who were saying, because even the lesbians are saying, "Hang on a minute, Pride no longer represents us. This has just become, just a celebration of, for want of a better word, degeneracy, and sexual libertinism. And this is Pride is not a safe place for women and children, because they, as same-sex attracted women, are finding that they're being subject to harassment and abuse because they don't accept that men can be women." So Surrey Police were driving around this paedophile in their car, taking him into schools 2 days before he was then arrested for his crimes. And this, and so him and his partner were both founders of Surrey Pride, and they were convicted unanimously. There was this a whole. I won't shock your viewers by going into the precise nature of their offences, but they were, really very severe, absolutely depraved and shocking, and involving a very young child. And this police force, and it's funny, this Stephen Ireland, who they were supporting, had gone on to social media to say that he had reported me to them, and he hoped that something was done about my terrible hatred. So it was this same force that was supporting this guy that came and arrested me for misgendering and somebody else's meme. And then they arrested me 6 months later because the same activist, not Stephen Ireland, the other activist who's been on my case for many a year, was continuing to submit reports. And the shocking thing was my daughter is not in school, or was not in school, because she has special needs, and so she didn't have a school place. And Surrey Police had wanted to talk to me about, the use of my pronouns in a second police interview, and I had said, I'm very sorry, I cannot do the time that you want me to be at the police station because I need to drop her off at her special daycare provision. She has a particular group for children with special needs that she has to go to. And I said, I can't do that time. So, and also my lawyers had said, Caroline is the one that's being stalked and harassed. How are you going to support her? So because I didn't turn up, I literally dropped my daughter off, jumped into the shower, and literally, as I was in the shower, I had 4 policemen trying to take my door off the hinges. And literally, it was about hurt feelings on the internet, and wrong pronouns, and they had to call out a woman because they were all men, and they thought, okay, by law there needs to be a woman present, and they took me off and put me in a cell again. And this was literally over words on the internet, and I wasn't inciting violence. Literally, I'd used the wrong pronouns. And then it gets even worse. They tried to take out a restraining order on me, and it was the most draconian thing you have ever seen. So it would have stopped me from being able to use the internet. It would have stopped me from being able to use a mobile phone. It said internet use is a privilege, not a right. I would have had to have given them all my email passwords or my social media passwords. I'd need to give them the serial numbers of every single device in the house. They already had my kids' switches and things, and they could have come into my house at any time between 8 a.m. in the morning and 8 p.m. at night and checked everybody's devices, even though I hadn't been convicted of any crime at this point. It was so draconian, and I just know that this activist would have used it to, every time he got a nasty comment online, he'd have said, "That's Caroline," and sent the police to my door. And my solicitor, and the scary thing was, so they were trying to put all these restrictions on my life. If I wanted to text my mother, I would have had to have asked their permission first. And my solicitor, who is a very experienced criminal solicitor, was really shocked because they wanted to go to court and argue this, and they would not let me see the evidence they had against me. And they were saying, you're not to show the defendant the evidence. So I wasn't a defendant because it was a restraining order that the police were bringing. And my solicitor said, this is completely against Caroline's human rights. You can't expect her to go to a court hearing without knowing what the evidence is. So basically, and he wrote to the Attorney General and he said, if you don't show her, I'm just going to do it anyway, because this is against her human rights. And they agreed. And my solicitor also said, he said, I have defended the most hardened criminals, Caroline. He said, you can imagine the sorts of people I have dealt with he said, and in 25, 30 years of practice, nothing has made me so angry as what's happened to you. He said, because I defend all these hardened criminals. And he said, and I normally sit down a criminal or an accused, and I say, what's happened? Give me your side of the story. I'm not going to judge you. Just tell me what's going on and tell me the situation, and I will do my best to try and get the best outcome we can. And he said, and you can imagine, he said, I've heard all sorts of things that would make your blood run cold, because as a criminal solicitor, very often it's like a cab rank rule. You can't really pick and choose your clients, and of course everybody everybody has got the right to a fair trial. So everyone's got the right to a defence solicitor. So he said, he said, nothing has made me so angry. He said, because I can tell you're, married to a priest. You're a Catholic mum of 5 kids. You're just a normal woman who has never had any kind of brush with the law in your life. And he said, and they are treating you worse than a paedophile or a terrorist. He said, these are the sort of severe sanctions you would expect to be put on somebody who was a terrorist or, was looking at paedophile images on the internet. He said, I have never seen this applied to any of my clients. He said, it's the most draconian. And the police said, well, we recognise it's a massive infringement on Caroline's human rights, but we feel that it's necessary in order to preserve life. And basically it was because the activist was saying that if I wasn't got off the internet, then he would probably end his own life because my presence made him so upset. And then what happened was, on the day of the court hearing, I was braced for the worst, and my legal team told me, this is probably going to be applied to you, Caroline, because it's an interim hearing and they'll just believe that, the court's very short of time, and they'll just believe the police because they are minded to believe the police, so they'll believe that there's a strong case. So you're going to have to maybe put up with it for now, and then we'll have to challenge it. But as the good Lord would have it, there were 40 criminals, genuine criminals, that had been in the cells to be dealt with that night. So they didn't have time to deal with my case. And during that pause period, we got Surrey Police's solicitor to look at our own submissions. And our own submissions showed that, far from being the victim, this transgender activist had been the protagonist, that he had been the one posting all kinds of horrific abuse about me and posting things about my family, posting things about my children, and posting that he had intimate knowledge of my life, along with threats. So the solicitor, Police's barrister, opened up our submissions showing that the activist was in fact the abusive one, and it literally, the colour drained out of his face, and he said, I can't bring this in front of the court, because he knew that once the judge saw it, that it would be thrown out of court, and this is the value of having an independent bar, solicitors who have a duty to the court and to no one else. And the police solicitor said, in good conscience, I can't bring this. So that all got dropped. And then Surrey Police and the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, looked at it and said, she's not done anything wrong here, can't find any evidence of anything, and the whole thing. So then we sued them for wrongful arrest, and they paid me a decent settlement, admitting. So we had sued them for wrongful arrest and for discrimination, because we said, you've completely discriminated against her and her Christian views. You haven't taken into account that she's allowed her views. She's allowed to disagree with abortion. She's allowed to disagree with LGBT ideology. And rather than fight it in court, they paid a settlement. So yeah, I mean, so that, and it's still, it still hasn't gone away. In that this activist has been pursuing me for 8 years. Just last week, he sent another legal threat. And every time he sends a legal threat, then of course I have to spend money I don't have defending myself. But we're hoping that there will be some progress there, because I know that a King's Counsel lawyer is putting a case in to have this guy declared a vexatious litigant, because it's not just me. He's had something like 6 or 7 people arrested now. he has brought over 50 civil cases, and he does this all on taxpayer money.
Yeah.
I mean, it has been an absolute roller coaster.
I'm sure. And Caroline and I have known each other for donkey's years. And I've got a script here to follow. Of course, she's gone off piece completely. And we're
Sorry.
nearly running out of time. But I
Oh.
tell you what, we're going to invite you back again very shortly to discuss what we were going to discuss.
Oh, sorry, Rodney.
That's all right. We know
We can
what
do
you
it.
like, Carol. But no, it's I've got a couple of questions pertaining to this. Number one, this guy is a professional activist, let's be kind and call him that. But he's
Mm,
caused havoc, hasn't he, with your family life, with you? And it
absolutely.
never goes away. The scars are there.
No, that's right. I mean, it was, and particularly, so for my children, seeing me be arrested
Mm.
and having their devices taken, and in fact, two of them were come. I have, five children, and two of them were coming home from school, and they came home and saw this police car out the front, and these police there, and they sort of came in via the back. But yeah, my son, who was 7 at the time, was really, no, maybe he was 6 or 7. He was really very traumatized,
Yeah.
and even now it's, I had this and in fact they confiscated my devices and they kept them for 16 months, and I had that hanging over me for about a year. Am I going to be charged, because they kept prolonging the bail while he put in more complaints and more complaints. Yeah, it was a really traumatic time.
Well, we're a unique country. Other countries are infected. Even Spain, some people say, especially Spain, with this
Mm.
freedom of speech. We've got an extremely ultra left-wing government here. You've had a bit of a taste of it under Sir Keir. Goodness knows what Sir Andy is going to turn out, but time will tell. But I want to cover one thing before we go, which is I'm surprised it's not hit more leading headlines, page one. You might have come across this on page 9. You know about it, and that's the EU's chat control decision, which pinpoints two things. One is the control and the lack of any sort of, democracy, let's use the word, in the EU. I mean, the bigwigs there decide what happens.
Yes, and
Tell us specifically what is wrong at the moment.
so, with the chat control in the EU, I think the frightening thing about that is that actually most MEPs were not in favour of it, but they managed to rig the process so that they needed um, enough MPs had to oppose the motion to actually, they were proposing the bill, and not enough MPs in time managed to stop the motion being put forward. So it was put through a very rushed process, even though MPs have not had time to debate and talk about the motion. And of course, this is a huge infringement on privacy, because it's going to mean that everybody's private messages are scanned and read.
Exactly, and this is a masterclass in goalpost moving, because an normal majority, 50% plus, if you wish, that was completely behind closed doors, overruled. Oh, it's a special law, this. You'll need 60% to get it through. Now, over the years, I don't care whether people are pro-Brexit or anti-Brexit, the facts are we are being ruled in Europe by a non-democratic entity. There it is, deciding through the Commission exactly what we will do. That is frightening. Now, we get it in Spain big time because, I repeat, we've got an extreme left-wing government here. And ID cards are another thing that springs to
Yes.
mind. You have no idea, Great Britain. You have, under Andy, hopefully a chance that it's going to be put on the back burner.
Hope,
because it's horrendous. You cannot do anything here. One of our companies here has literally ceased trading because the accountant didn't produce a piece of paper in time. And this
well,
is what happens when ID comes in. They can track you, stop you buying a loaf of bread. It's
I
not
know.
exaggerating.
And the interesting, well, I mean, we Citizen Go's sister arm, hashtag We're in Spain, is doing
Yeah.
a lot of good work
Yes, they are.
against Pedro Sanchez corrupt government, and bringing various legal cases to
I
make
mean,
sure.
it is corrupt government. I mean, they're all in there. One of them's been put in prison already. Sanchez's wife's on the run. I mean,
Yes,
it's a classic. Why is it always the left that has a go? Why is it always LGBT that has a go?
I think, I mean, back to digital ID, although uh, we do have a form in the UK, and so we were, before we went on air, we were talking about the fact that I've been going to the gym, and my gym owner James, really, very nice man, very much aligned, with as most normal people in the UK are, very much aligned with normal views, and he said that he had to sign up to digital ID to have the gym and the business properly registered at Companies House, even though he's been registered at, he's paid his taxes and he's done everything right. He's done all the red tape, but they were threatening him to fine him huge amounts, uh, and strike his business off
Mm.
because he hadn't registered digitally. And obviously, he's a small business owner, and we're being hit by colossal taxes here in the UK as a result of this left wing government. So, for example, I mean, I bring it back to me, but the business rates are massive, have doubled, and my two of my children are in independent education, so we've been slammed with an extra 20% VAT on school fees, because they've decided that, if you educate your children privately, well, that's taking a burden off the state, right? That means that you don't need a state place. That means that actually through your taxation, you're still paying for education for other people's children, and that's as it should be. I don't regard children getting an education, but we're making private arrangements for ours, and so the government have said, oh, we're going to put a 20% tax, VAT, on education. In no other country in the world do they do that. Education is not a luxury. Education is a public good and a public benefit. But because the left wants to force everybody into the same schools and everybody to the same curriculum, and they don't understand, or they do understand, but they're pretending they don't, that equality is not sameness, it's not identicality. You can never get two families with identical circumstances, and even if you did, you probably wouldn't get the same outcomes for those children. So families like mine, I mean, goodness, we've been really struggling because we can't take our children out of school in the middle of their exam years, and where I live in Surrey, there are no local state school places anyway, so there are no schools that can accept them. So
It's a nonsense. You're right. Oh, we'll have 6,000 more teachers. That's a
so
zero. Forget it. It's all,
it's all
well,
class. It's all very much class, envy,
yes.
hatred, and it's about the government. And it's the same thing as digital ID. It's about the government controlling every element of your life. You have these people who say, "Oh, if you're not doing anything wrong, there's nothing to fear." Now, I know, as somebody who's had all my equipment taken and scanned. So, to give you an example of this, when they took my devices, one of the things I told the police at interview was, this particular activist has been very abusive to me and has been targeting my family, which he has. He did things like he found out where my eldest daughter was studying and published it. And he publishes things about, and he's always talking about where my eldest daughters at university, because he knows it will, make me, it would with any mother, make you defensive. And he tries to make out that she chose a particular university to be as far away as possible from me. And, that's really hurtful and not true. And it's designed to kind of undermine my relationship with my daughter. Of course it doesn't. But do you know what I mean? And you speak to any parent and, their kids are attacked by it, because that's what the left do. They make it very personal. So I told the police that this was happening, that he had been stalking me. And they said, well, okay, Caroline, if that's the case, we will find all the evidence on your devices that we seized. So they seized. They looked into the hard drive of my devices, and I had nothing to hide. And what did they find? 39 screenshots of abuse that this guy had sent me. But what did they do? They said, we found 39 screenshots on her computer. I'd saved his abuse because he was always suing me and reporting me to the police. So I'd saved that as evidence. And they said, we found 39 screenshots on her devices. That is proof that she is obsessed with him and stalking him. She's got no reason to have these screenshots of his abuse at all. It was Orwell-esque or Kafkaesque. There I was, preserving the evidence and preserving the proof, which is what the police always tell you to do. And then when they found the proof, they said, well, that's proof that she's the aggressor. They were so programmed in their heads. So, and I maintain with anything, you pick up a stone and you will always find insects crawling underneath it. So they could pick up all of our phones and all of our messages, and make what you will of them. So, for example, my mother will email me and text me, and my mother is in her 80s, and she probably won't always be the most politically correct because she was brought up in a different generation. Certainly my mother is not, or my family is not in any way, shape or form racist or abusive or anything like that. But basically the older generation have a different lexicon. And, so something as simple as when I was taking the family there and she said, would you like a Chinese? She was worried, well, could that be misinterpreted? Because obviously she meant, would you like a Chinese meal? But she was really worried about what she had sent, because anyone who's trying to get you for something and is looking at you with a non-charitable, openly hostile lens, thinking, what can we use, could find anything.
That's absolutely true. And the danger is there. And there are people taking advantage of it. These are smart guys. They know exactly what they're doing. And basically, in the West, we've got to defend ourselves against these people. There's things going on there, folks, and it's not conspiracy. It's actual fact. But listen, we've got to go. We've overrun our time. Surprise, surprise. And we're going to get you back. And we're going to ask you a number of questions related to this. But also, why have you got it in for Nigel Farage? There's a teaser for you. We'll have you back quickly. Oh, but I'm sorry, we've got to mention next Monday. Tell us what's happening next Monday. You've got 30 seconds.
Oh, so on Monday is a puberty blockers case. So Citizen Go is funding a challenge to the puberty blockers trial that's happening on children. So we've been funding a case they've banned puberty blockers, but the NHS still wants to bring them back and to experiment on children. And so we are funding a legal challenge against that. And the court is going to rule whether or not any more children can be recruited to the trial, or whether or not we have to wait for the substantive judicial review, the main case, which is in October. So
you want people out there in front of the court this following
Yes, so this Monday, the 27th. So we're getting an emergency injunction. Well, we're applying for an emergency injunction to say, please do not recruit any children onto this trial. And it's actually thanks to us that the trial has been paused. If this legal challenge that we'd brought hadn't started, then children would be experimented on now. And this matters beyond the UK because other countries are looking at the UK and are looking at this court ruling to see how it goes and whether or not they can start experimenting on children with puberty blockers too.
Yeah, we've got a worldwide audience. They will recognize what you just said, and especially in the States. They cannot believe what a state the United Kingdom is in. And it's not just the grooming gangs, that's bad enough. How can a country let this go on for 30 years? It's everything else. And we'll talk about it next time. Thank you so much,
All
Caroline.
right, Rodney. Thank you.